Hi, I'm Phil Dispenza, and welcome back to Collecting, Investing, or Somewhere in Between. This is part two to episode one, featuring the Atari 2600. And I had split it and cut it off last week because I was told it was a little too long. So, 2 hours. So each part is 1 hour. And this is part two covering the third party software. So enjoy. So I want to move on to third party. Okay, so Atari, I think I've covered pretty well. Rare games, even boxed. I wanted to mention Adventure because the guy had said something about Adventure. Uh, that sealed is impossible, which technically it is. I don't even have a sealed copy of that. But he said, finding complete boxes is relatively easy. I don't remember the exact words he used, but it is not easy. You might find five copies out there at a time or something, and then they're usually rather expensive. So if you can get a nice copy of Adventure, complete in the box, even if it's open, it's probably worth grading. But there's certain games like a lot of the games that came out, Asteroids, again, a red box Asteroid is really good. Common 1981 boxes, there's like 2-3 versions or something, but they're very common. Mario Brothers is another one. There's certain a red box Mario, next to impossible to find. So do your homework, and all you do is like find some title or something you might be interested in collecting, and or investing in, and say, oh, I want to find this sealed and grading, and then look at my website and see what variations are out there, and then see what's available online, and always look at the sold. That's part of the reason why I find things too, because some people, they can ask whatever they want, but when you look at the sold, you see what the going rate is, but you also might find something that somebody saw, oh, this is a rare variant, and snatched it up right away. And so sometimes I'll find some variations I never had before in the sold section, and see, a lot of times most people will take pictures of front and back. At least I do scans of front and back. Sometimes they do sides and stuff, but try to see which variations are the most common and then avoid those. My suggestion, unless it's a rare game, then you just buy it. Doesn't matter which variation it is. But or if it's super high grade, you might want to take your chances, but don't spend a lot of money on some of this stuff, because I'm not going to say it's all out there, but there are certain things that are out there. So I'm going to go to 20th Century Fox. If you look at my list, 20th Century, because I put numbers at the top, 20th Century Fox logically covers movie stuff. And some stuff isn't movie stuff, but most of it, you can say it's related to movies. So Aliens, I do not have this boxed. I try to hold off because you see copies out there and the boxes are torn and they want $50, and do you want to pull the trigger on damaged stuff? And I never pulled the trigger on Aliens at all, and I never found it in the wild. I found cartridges. I have cartridges. I have duplicates of the cartridges. Almost all the, I'd say, uncommon to rare games, I have several copies. Super rare, probably not. I'm lucky I have my one. But common stuff I might have, like Combat. There's 28 different cartridge variations. As I mentioned, 15 boxes, but there's 28 cartridge variations that I've documented for Combat, and I had, I don't know, 150 copies of that at one point. And people say, oh, you can use that for a doorstop. But again, out of that, 150, there might be 2 of one variation and 30 of another. So are you going to sell that variation that only has 2 copies for the same price of the one for 30? No, you're not. But again, until somebody recognizes that, and I actually would break it down. I used to have my sale price list, and I would break it down by variation based on my site. What I called it version A, version B, version C. The thing is if you find new variations that went in between, then you'd have to adjust it. So D becomes E and E becomes F. But so
20th Century Fox got a little off track there. Mainly games. Alien, I never found it in the wild. Um, but, probably one of the better games to actually find. If you find it boxed, nice box, or even sealed, grab it. Most people would know that, though. And that's because Alien's popular. Um, what I have like 3 copies of this right now in my possession is MASH. And most people know MASH uh, based on the TV show with Alan Alda, of course, and the original movie and stuff. And, and you're operating, it's cool because you're operating on a patient as part of your thing. I think part of the game, your helicopter, you got to fly in, pick up the wounded, and then you get into the operation mode, which is similar to operation, but instead of pulling straight up, you got to pull the shrapnel out and through like a little maze of the guy here. Um, but it was cool. And another game that Megaforce from 20th Century Fox had Chuck Norris. Was that Chuck Norris? I'm trying to remember. My brain's not working right now. But I again boxed. I'd be getting $30 for that game, and now, it might be going for more, it might not. But if you have it sealed, that's the big thing. So they came out with Porky's. And if you know early 80s, I was a little young for it, so I don't think I saw it until it came on HBO. But Porky's is about teenage kids, but it's a little more adult. But it's funny. And they made a video game of Porky's. And here's one that I just picked up, I think in the past 6 months. I got probably the last copy. It is sealed. Somebody had sealed 6-pack cases of 20th Century Fox games, and a lot of them he wanted $90, $100. And again, there's probably great prices. I just didn't have money. But this one, I said, because this is my birthday present. My birthday was in May, so that's how I knew it was around there. This was $50. It's Fantastic Voyage. It's got a little dent, a little crease somewhere on one of them. Yeah, very, very tiny, faint, which I don't think would matter too much. But 20th Century Fox games, they slide out. In fact, maybe I'll show you it with MASH. They slide out. They have a little tab. Most of the time, this tab is ripped off. One of the copies of MASH I have is ripped off. But it slides out, and then, the cartridge is underneath. It has a little tabs to hold the manual in it. But one side is black, and then the other side is printed, and it's like a book. So you put the printed side, and the little flap tab overlaps the words. So I have a Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes, and it looks sealed. The problem is that the whole side of this box is black, which means it's put in backwards. Now, I don't know if it was re-glued by the person, and I never noticed, or maybe the factory put it in backwards. I can't tell you. But 20th Century Fox games, Fantastic Voyage, based on a movie, just like the other things, the Porky's, the MASH, the Aliens, are probably decent investments, especially if you could find them sealed. Even though that guy found 6 of them, it's 6. If they find 100, that's a different story. But if there's only 6, and again, is he going to trickle more out? I haven't seen the guy put on any other new ones. He sold out, I think he had 8 titles total. 6 copies of each, and most people snatched them up. Why? Because the grading company's here. If this was 2 years ago, I probably could have gotten each game for $10, $20, and maybe he's been sitting on them. Who knows? Or maybe he sometimes you have something and then you forget that you have it, or just you bought it so many years ago. How many times I have comics or something that I bought and just threw in a box, and you just don't get to it. It's buried somewhere. It's 4 boxes under or something. And then you're like, hey, I just found this, and now it's going for $500 or something. So now it's time to sell. So 20th Century Fox, probably good overall investment, especially for movies. I'm going to move to Activision. Now, I only pulled out a few. Activision, a lot of the programmers worked for Atari. And I guess didn't get the recognition they wanted, or maybe they weren't getting paid as much as they should have too. But I don't think the Atari, especially early on, didn't give credit for anything that programmers did, artists did, or anything. So you probably um, wouldn't want to stay. It's like Image Comics. These people wanted to make their own things, and so McFarlane and Eric Larson, Silvestri, and everybody, wanted Liefeld running off to do their own company. So that's what Activision, a lot of the programmers did. They went off and started doing their own company. There's a lot of games. I think it's 58 total for Activision. And then somehow Activision acquired some Magic titles. So you're going to see some later Magic titles with Activision labels and stuff. And again, you're going to see a lot of variations with this. Most of the Activision games, there's international versions, there's foreign other versions, there's Canadian versions. Um, the product code a lot of times will change. So it'll say AG dash whatever, and then it'll say for Canadian, it'll say CAG dash, and then for I think foreign PAL or something, it'll say PAG dash. Sometimes they change the label color, so instead of having pictures, it's solid blue, and there's a lot of things. But Activision games are pretty much unique. Atari did arcade games, and you'll see Coleco and Parker Brothers. A lot of the other ones, they try to do their own, versions of the arcade games, because most people were familiar with arcades. Back in the day, I lived in the arcade when I was like 13. I mean, literally lived in the arcade every week, several times a week sometimes. But, I spent a ton of money. I could have been buying games or comics or something. But, it's part of your youth. So Activision, they came out with their own games, and the quality versus Atari made games was night and day. So Atari had to learn to ramp up their quality and gameplay because Activision was blowing them away. And, you had sport like the boxing. This is a little cheesy because it was an early one, but Activision, they came out in the 80s. There's certain games, and it's perfect with Activision if you follow the variations, the box changes. Usually, the first box is the box flat bottom is blank, and then it'll be revision 1, revision 2, revision 3. And with Activision, and I mentioned this on my site, they actually changed addresses. They have 3 different addresses. They went from Sunnyvale to Santa Clara to Mountain View, and there's a couple of overlaps that I think maybe because of the printer or something, that's the address is out of order. Where you think, okay, they moved, so this should have been printed after with this address, but it's an earlier revision. But I'm not going to get into that. But the most popular, I mean, you'll have things like Barnstorming and River Raid. River Raid's tough, especially sealed. It's popular. It's one of the more popular games. Loose, I would come across, I'd come across tons of Pitfall. Star Master is super common. I must have 6 or 7 box copies of that at least. But Pitfall is always good. They usually range like in the $30 to $40 range, complete in box, depending on condition. The one I wanted to pull out, I pulled out of my collection, Pitfall 2. This is not sealed, but it is boxed. And again, you might come across this box is pretty good. And this is where condition's going to probably affect like value big time. If you can find this sealed, and you got to watch because sometimes if it's shrink wrapped, that's what these guys are for. These grading companies. I had a game, I forgot which game it was. It was an Activision game, and the guy's like, "Oh, it's sealed," and I wound up leaving him a negative because I get it in shrink wrapped, and it's got a price on it, and then I look at it, the price is under the shrink wrap, so the price sticker is. There's no way this was sealed. He sealed it himself, or he sold it and he wouldn't take it back. That's the thing. If he would have taken it back, I probably wouldn't have left him the negative. But he's like, "Oh, it's sold as is." I'm like, "Okay, negative." But you got to watch because I seen on ColecoVision, there's Beam Rider and Hero. I think it was the Beam Rider I caught. Somebody's selling a sealed copy with shrink wrap, and I bought a case of them, was it, or maybe 2 cases of them. There was Hero and Beam Rider, the 2 I bought by the case, and they didn't have shrink wrap. So did somebody make the shrink wrap themselves? You got to watch on that. Okay, so again, the sports games for like tennis was cool for by Activision, but you had things like some of the rare games. You got pressure cooker, you got not tooth protectors. My brain's not working again. We'll skip that one. Oink. You know, you'll see some weird games, but the better ones came out in 82, 83. So, Rampage. If you played the arcade, you know exactly what this is. And I'm trying to think if this is dated 84. I'm trying to look for a copyright date on the back. I don't see one. I'm actually missing the manual for this. So this is a box copy with cartridge, no manual. And somewhere along the line, I'm probably just going to buy a manual. If there's only one release, sometimes there's only one release to certain games. They didn't even make foreign versions. Which means that if you're marrying something and there's only one release, then there's only one manual. You don't have to worry about putting the wrong manual with the game. And if you send these things to be graded, they might actually note this is not the correct manual, or this is not the correct cartridge that goes with this box. This is a game, it's actually pretty popular. It's Space Shuttle. And this is before, any bad things happen. This is dated 83. But this came with overlays that you put over the switches for your Atari. This thing is very complicated, and it's probably a good investment if you could find that sealed. So Activision games, most of them are probably decent investments. I wouldn't go crazy on them unless you find like the rarest of rare. And again, go to the site and see what I have. I'm going to move on to Apollo. I'm not going to cover every third-party game, or else I'll be here for another 2 hours. But Apollo is not a really well-known third-party company. But some of the games are relatively rare. But I have all of them. I don't think I have all of them boxed, but I definitely have every cartridge for this. Final Approach is one of the more popular ones. This one, complete in the box, probably well over $100, even opened. Wabbit, you go around and you're stealing carrots from the garden. Sounds more like Bugs Bunny. But, some of the art on these, like this is pretty cool. You see the girl running chasing the rabbits away from her garden. I think she's throwing eggs. She's throwing eggs at the rabbits. So she's wasting eggs for carrots. I wonder which one would be more valuable. But, complete in box, sealed if you could find them, probably would yield, a good investment. Again, I'm not going to mention long-term, short-term. That's going to be your decision because I would say long-term for things that aren't known. Like I said, the 86 Snoopy and the Red Baron. Even the Sorcerer's Apprentice or something. If it's rare and not commanding value, or it's not even out there, people don't know about it, that's long term. But something like the Spider-Man, so just flip it because prices are going to come down on very common things. All right, so CBS. Now CBS Electronics, most people are familiar with them with the record company, and I think some of these were actually sold through magazines. Some of these video games through the CBS Record Club. But this is a sealed copy of Gorf. This was like 4 different. There's like a Space Invaders version and a Galaxian, but they have like 4 different video games in one. That's what's so cool about Gorf. You also had Mountain King, which is relatively popular for CBS, and Wizard of War, another arcade classic. But there weren't too many CBS games out there. What they did is they actually took Coleco games and started releasing them overseas. So I pulled out a few, or I pulled out 2 actually. And you will have Coleco versions of these. And I believe Rock and Rope only has one Coleco release. I don't think there's variations on that. But then you get the CBS, and the CBS is if you look at Coleco versions of CBS and go online, you will see people selling like a lot of them: Donkey Kong Jr., the Rock and Rope, Frontline. A lot of the arcade classics that Coleco put out are available through CBS, and there's a lot of variations out there. So there might be a French version, there might be a Canadian version, a German version, a multi-language version, a Dutch version. I mean, there's all these different, and sometimes there's more versions just on like the international version. It might be a picture label, an arcade label, whatever it is. I've been I pretty much documented as much as I could find at the time. But again, there's probably more out there. I don't have more time to just go back when I'm trying to go forward with all the other stuff I'm trying to do. Fill in all the gaps that I have already. I'm not going to, if I ever had, and I don't think I'll ever have, that's why I rely on people helping me out. You know, they see, oh, I got this CBS version you don't have on your site. So, you know, but this is released in, I don't know, here, printed in Holland. So right off the back, this is a different version. And there's 3 screenshots. There might be 5 languages, 4 languages or something. And again, is there going to be value in these? Probably not. Even though they're tons rarer than, you know, a US version, because most people, one, you have to buy stuff from overseas. So you're already paying higher prices, not just for shipping, but a lot of these overseas people charge more. You know, where you can get these games, if this game was here in the US, you might pay $20. They want $50. So you're going to be paying more. Then you got to pay $25 in shipping and stuff. So unless you have connections, or you can buy cases sealed. And then again, how many people care about this variant? So you have to take that into mind. Now this, on the other hand, people might care. Smurf. And I believe there's a Strump version. I don't know. I don't think I have it boxed, which is the French version word for Smurfs. And this is the Rescuing Gargamel's Castle game. And this one is just, I think it's just a general, it says printed in Holland, but everything's in English. So you're going to find CBS versions written in, what do you call it? Yeah, I'm trying not to get off screen too much. Written in different languages. Again, there's tons out there. And when I say, you know, when I said there's 6,000 or something, or 5,000, whatever games released for the Atari, that's not including all the variations. So I'm not counting 15 box variations of Combat or you know, whatever out there. You know, it's crazy. You can have just Atari, if you collected every variation of everything, you might have 20, 30,000 games. And and that's just the 2600. So as a collector, you know, you have to see how you want to limit yourself. As an investor, you pick and choose. And again, do your homework. So I'm going to move to Coleco. Most popular. I didn't have any Coleco games handy at first, so before I made this video, so I pulled out Donkey Kong. And Donkey Kong, if you look, there's different versions of this game. So on the back, if I remember, if it's Donkey Kong, there's a joystick, then there's something with a period at the end of the sentence. There's one without a period. There's one with not showing the words above, what do you call that? The words above the joystick. I think Plays Like the Real Arcade there's a picture of Donkey Kong instead. So there's several variations. And cartridge-wise, there's a made in the USA, there's a blank, I think, there's a made in Hong Kong or printed in Hong Kong, there's little gold stickers. So Donkey Kong, these are sealed, and how they're sealed is they're sealed like this, flat. So once it's open, a lot of times people rip this tab off because this flap hangs. If you rip the tab off, you can tuck it in. So here, I'm tucked in, even though I have this piece sticking up. So most people just tear it. It's perforated for you to tear. So Donkey Kong Jr., a lot of the arcades, some of the rare ones. Frontline, I love that game. It was another one of my favorites when I was a teenager. Time Pilot, another favorite, real, relatively rare. Zaxxon. Then you'll see Venture, which is cool. It's more common. Mousetrap's another one, a little more common. Probably one of the more common games out of Coleco would be Mousetrap, Carnival. So investment-wise, again, if you find a specific variation that's rarer than the other ones, I wouldn't necessarily. Donkey Kong, yes and no. Yes, because Mario, Donkey Kong, no, because there's tons of it out there. So that's a toss-up. Again, that could be an early one. You grade it, you sell it, and then you wait for prices to drop to buy an extra one for yourself. This is one they can't grade. As far as I know, they can't grade. It is called Berenstain Bears Kidvid. Back in late 90s, I discovered that Coleco decided Ralph Baer, the guy they call him the father of video games, he actually created the Odyssey. He's the one who created the video games for your house, literally. That's how it started. Some people always give Atari credit. No, this is way before Atari, but he came up with different designs, and he approached Coleco with this. It was a tape recorder called a Kidvid, and your tape recorder would plug into your Atari, and you would load the games from the cassettes. It was like great technology, and that the actual tape recorder called a Kidvid was packed with Smurfs. It's called Smurf Saves the Day, and I got lucky enough. I wound up buying one U.S. version and 4 Canadian versions. Sound one. I wound up keeping I have my original Kidvid. The Sound ones I traded away for other stuff, but this Berenstain Bears was the only other thing ever created for the Kidvid. So there's a cartridge in here, and there's 3 cassettes. And this is brand new sealed. This is the only thing I've ever really paid big money for. I paid $300 for it. And for me, that was big money. Especially when at the time I'm paying $1 or $2 for games like, crazy, even complete in box. Shrink wrap games I was finding even in local stores still had Atari. I wasn't paying more than $2 to $5. So for me to lay out that kind of money, I paid $75 for those Kidvid Sound ones, and I traded for, I'd say, a decent amount of stuff, high value stuff, better quality stuff. All right, so I'm gonna move on. We got to keep going past Coleco, and I'm gonna go into Data Age. Now, Data Age, for the most part, didn't have games that you would recognize. So one of the rarer games for Data Age is Encounter at L5. And I actually have 2 copies. Here's my extra box copy that I just found. And variations with Data Age, you see how the title says it's in white and the side is in black. Well, there's a lot of the games released had white, black. Maybe, I don't think they had black, white, but there might be variations with the sides of the box. Encounter at L5 is one of the rarer games for the system. Another rare game for this Data Age, and this, when I purchased a lot, I think it was early 2000s, 2000, 2001. I think it was like 100 and something games, and I didn't pay too much, maybe $1.50 a game. It came out. This was in there. This is the actual copy. I have not found another box version. Frankenstein's Monster, and everybody knows Frankenstein. Universal Studios, even though it's not Universal Boris Karloff Frankenstein. Immediately after I made this purchase, I got contacted. This is back in the day when you can actually contact people, and you would see who won and the auctions and stuff. And somebody's like, "Will you sell this game?" I'm like, "Nope, I don't have it, so it's going in my collection." Now, the one game that everybody, not everybody, but if you're an Atari person, you've seen the commercials for them, and I have a sealed copy in my collection, is Journey Escape, featuring, of course, the band Journey. And it was a little goofy. You had to dodge things and fans and stuff walking up the screen, and it was a little goofy. It says, even for one of the world's hottest groupies, will you be able to guide all 5 members of the group to the safety of their famous Scarab escape vehicle? And it's funny because you know Journey in the '80s was super popular, and I don't think there are too many video games released based on musicians. So this is probably a great investment if you get it cheap enough. I don't know how many's out there, sealed that is. And again, so if you get it, you grade it. You're one of the first ones to get it graded and selling it. Maybe somebody will give you $2,000-3,000 for it. Long term, probably not. That's again my guess. I have a feeling that some of this stuff is out there in quantities. Um, so you take your risks. All right. In Magic, I didn't have too many Magic games. I didn't pull out too many. I have stacks of games here already. But in Magic, most popular was Demon Attack, of course. In fact, what do I have here? I got rid of the Sphinx. But a lot of the Magic games, Demon Attack was probably the most popular of all the games. There were some rarer games. Again, Atlantis. They actually had a contest for Atlantis, and I think there's 25. They call it Atlantis 2, but it's just like it's a version of Atlantis that I think you get 1 point per score. Every time you score, you only get 1 point instead of like 10 or 50 or whatever. And I think there's only 25 copies, if I believe so. It was for a contest and next to impossible to find. There's a game called No Escape. If you find that sealed, that's probably one of the better ones. I didn't write down offhand. I'm just going out of memory. One game I do have here, Moonsweeper. This is brand new sealed. Picked it up somewhere. My Atlantis is sealed. I have several. My Demon Attack, out of all of them, I think that's the most common. I don't think that I have a sealed copy of that. But again, this is 1983-1A. There might be, because again, a lot of these revision 1, revision 2, revision 3. So just because a Demon Attack might be common, there's foreign versions. Again, you'll see ones with 5 languages on the box, 5 languages. There's text labels on the cartridges. There's picture labels on the cartridges. So certain variations might be worth buying for when people are recognizing that variation. This variation is rare. This one's not. So that's in Magic. M Network. If you recognize M Network is Intellivision. It's Intellivision's version of making Atari games. Intellivision was always famous for their sports games, but I'm specifically showing you Tron because there's 2 Tron games released for the Atari, but there's 4 for the Intellivision. We'll get into television another time, next video probably. But Disney license, it's something where this is something that is probably worth, if you can find it sealed, get it graded. And M Network, that's what I meant, M Network. If you find M Network game sealed, Tron's worth it. Lock and Chase, probably not. Astro Blast, probably not. I went to a flea market one time, again, late 90s, when nobody was doing anything, and it was one of those, rent-a-trucks, U-Haul, whatever it was, Penske. And the guy had, I guess, purchased buyout of The Wiz. And if you're from the New York area, New Jersey, you know what The Wiz is. Nobody beats The Wiz. It's one of those electronic stores like PC Richards and Tops Appliance City. Again, it's a lot of regional stuff, Crazy Eddies. Well, this guy had, tons of stuff. Everything was marked Wiz. And he had a ton of Atari 2600 games, M Network, and a ton of Intellivision games. And I buck a piece. So I was like, okay, I wound up dropping, I bought at least 100 games. But I was with my friend, and he had a Jeep, and there was 3 of us in the Jeep, and Jeep didn't hold too much, so had this huge box as the fourth passenger, full of games. I bought in Televoices and stuff from him. But again, it's out there, or was out there. So some of the stuff, there's a lot of sports games. Best ever. If you grew up in New York, they had WPIX Channel 11. They actually used a couple of the M Network games, and the person would be on the phone, and you have to yell picks. And every time you yelled picks during the game, the person on the other end at the TV station would press the fire button. So they're playing the football game, you yell picks, and you would throw the football or something. And it was never timed right anyway. And I don't know, these kids, I never got through, so I didn't win anything. But, you'd win prizes and stuff. But the quality, again, for M Network was tons better than the Atari. So they have a lot of the games. Frogs and Flies is decent, probably for investment. The International Soccer is one of the rarer sports games. You'll get the Super Challenge Football, Super Challenge Baseball. They're common. But in the mid 80s in television, whoever owned Intellivision M Network, they changed ownership, and they went from Intellivision to INTV. And what happened was the games, even for the Atari, went to white label, plain white labels. If you look at the Intel M Network on my site, there's tons. There's actually 9 different mold cartridge variations, and there's with label variations. So you have this weird combination. Probably some of the best games you would probably pick up for the M Network. I mentioned Frogs and Flies. I mentioned the soccer. Kool-Aid Man, which I believe might have been only a mail order. You'll see ads in some of the comic books for it. And probably the best one to get would be He-Man, the Masters of the Universe. If you can get either one of those sealed, it's probably worth the investment. All right. So we are going to go to I just felt pulling this out. There's only 3 games for this company. It's called Mythicon. They're very cheesy. They originally retailed, if you look in the corner, $9.95. Did I point that right? Yeah. And this is Star Fox. I actually picked up all 3 of these. I don't remember what I paid, but they're sealed. And they're in this weird poly bag that's, I don't even know how to describe it, but see, it's an odd shape. I don't know if you can get this graded or something, but all 3 of my copies are brand new sealed. They're in perfect condition. And is this going to be worth something? Who cares about Mythicon? But again, it's rarer than other third-party systems. Companies. So again, you get a way. Am I going to put my money in it? If you can get them cheap, again, if it could get graded, if you pay $10, you pay $25, $35, whatever it is, the grading fee, and you can get 200 and make 5 times, 6 times your money, then that's good. Will you get $2,000 for it? Probably not. Will you ever get $2,000 for it? Probably not. So it's cool to have. It's part of the Atari library, but investment wise, short term, quick turnover, as quick as you can get, because there's not really interest. They're very, very poor gameplay, and if you read any kind of reviews on it, you're going to see that. I'm going to go to Parker Brothers. I actually pulled out quite a few Parker Brothers. Very famous. Very famous game company, board games and stuff. But I actually have several Parker Brothers games here, and a lot of arcade ports, or something. Sometimes it's just like I liked a lot of the Parker Brother games, and some of them are super rare. So what I didn't mention, Coleco, Mr. Do, because Parker Brothers actually came out with Mr. Do's Castle. That is one of your, I'd say, holy grails for Parker Brothers. Very, very tough to find. I actually have a copy. I don't know, can't remember if I have it boxed. And if I did have it boxed, I think I had a foreign box for some reason. But you had your most popular things. And this might have been discussed in that other guy's suggestion for investment. Popeye. Oh man, I'll leave that off and hang it up. Somebody has to call me at this time. I had considered unhooking the phone before I did this, but anyway. So Popeye, um, there's actually several variations of Parker Brothers. A lot of times, the Popeye does, and my next one will be Cubert. Um, it's got top load. It's what they call a single box, because a lot of the Parker Brothers games had a lid where you would take off the top of the box and then you'd see it have the insert inside. And I actually cover insert variations. Um, Sometimes the inserts were just blank, which means you can interchange them with anything. Sometimes they had these, like if it was U.S. released, it had a specific product number. 8360 or something, and then if it was foreign, it would have a different insert. So you have your cartridge, and almost all the Parker Brothers, if I can recall, have German versions, which actually are cut. Probably super rare, but again, is it something people are going to want? I don't know. So Popeye, arcade, famous, cartoons, been around, I don't know, 70, 80 years now? 90 years? I don't even remember. But Popeye, probably a decent investment if you find it sealed, but don't pay a lot to get it graded. Because again, Popeye sealed might be $500, $800 or something. Do you really think that's actually going to go up to $2,000, $5,000 or something? My guess, no. So buy it cheap. If you can get it for $50, maybe 100, buy it, get it graded, and then either flip it or hold it. I mean, you're a collector. It's cool artwork. Cubert, another one of these arcades, very, very popular. Cubert's common. Again, same single box version, double box version, foreign versions and stuff. There's a lot out there. I think I covered a lot of it on my website. Cubert's common. What's not common is the sequel, Cubert's Cubes. Um, you get that boxed, even if it's open. I suggest getting it graded as long as it's in decent condition. Frogger's another one. I don't have Frogger handy right now, but Frogger, popular arcade game. Everybody played it. Common. Frogger 2, the sequel, is also released by Parker Brothers. Not super rare, not as rare as Cubert's Cubes, not as rare as Mr. Deuce Castle, but rare enough. Where you probably pay well over 100 for a complete box. Where Frogger, you could probably get one for 10. So, that's probably a good thing. This, I think, has been discussed. G.I. Joe. This is sealed. Cobra Strike. And again, at the time, this is 82. This is when G.I. Joe was coming out. So you have the action figures, a lot of cross 80s toys and stuff would they would try to make video games for. So G.I. Joe, like I said, He-Man and stuff. This is probably worth buying. If you can find this sealed, $100, $150, this I wouldn't doubt would sell for $1,000. As long as the grade's high enough. I don't know how they do grading scale, but probably at least 1,000, maybe two now. But there's cases of this stuff out there. I don't have Spider-Man handy. My Spider-Man's sealed. I didn't find it in the boxes because all my stuff is just mixed. When I moved, I packed up everything, and everything just got jumbled up. I think some of my Parker Brothers were kept together, and that's why I have so many here. But my Spider-Man's sealed, and again, 1,800 I think is the going rate right now. But it started at $9,000, and it just went down from there. But I might have paid $10. I don't even know if I paid that. $5 for my sealed Spider-Man. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, sealed. This I got from my friend Hans. He was one of my customers at the time when I had my store. He went to Toys R Us. Star Wars nut. Didn't care about Atari. He saw this. He said there was 5 copies, 20 cents a piece. This was mid 80s, blowouts. And that's the time you would have bought this stuff, is when nobody else wanted it. So he bought 5 copies, and he traded this to me once I started saying, oh, yeah, I want Atari things in my store for store credit or comics or something or other. Maybe some Star Wars figures, who knows. But this came from Toys R Us, 20 cents back in the day. Poor Toys R Us doesn't exist, but brand new sealed. And another one I have sealed, Star Wars Jedi Arena. Star Wars is always going to be hot, and like I said in the first video, they're going to get their own, um, what do you call it? Their own uh, video, sci-fi video. So sealed Star Wars Jedi Arena. The Death Star Battle is the third game released, and it's funny because I don't have that box, and I've been searching for it, and now it's starting to get a little pricey. Because every time I saw that, it was always the boxes were always pretty trashed, and I didn't want to spend money on it to get something. See, I don't have to have something perfect, but I'd rather if it's cheap. If it's $5 and it's trashed, hey, well, I'll just buy it. But if somebody wants $30 and it's got a big tear through it, I'm not going to pay that money for that. So finding that sealed is going to be relatively more tough than these two. The hardest of the four, of course, was the arcade game, which is you flying your X-Wing with the vector graphics, which was those lines like Battlezone. If you were in the arcade, you remember that. You would sit in this giant video machine. It's like you're sitting in a cockpit. And then they had the stand-up models, too. But you had your little steering wheel or whatever, your X-Wing wheel. And you had to fly, fight off some TIE fighters and then fly into the trench and blow up the Death Star. And that seal probably commands a few $1,000s, my guess. So finding that sealed, that's probably a good investment. I see I'm running really long with this video. Hey, like I said, you could have paused it, but I'm not going to stop. I'm on a roll. So we're going to move on because there's not too much left anyway. Sears. This is very important. This is Sears Blackjack. And this is a gatefold. So Sears came out with the exact same games Atari did for most of them, not everything. I think there's 56 Sears games, something like that. I have most of them in the box. There are some super rare ones. There's 3 unique Sears games that probably are worth buying and grading. That's Stellar Track, Steeple Chase, and Submarine Commander. These were originally, I guess, was supposed to be released by Atari also, because some of these things were given product numbers. For Atari, you might have seen some things shown in catalogs or rumor mill, but for some reason, Atari didn't release those 3 games. But there are some certain titles for Sears, and again, finding Sears box games. A lot of people are like, don't consider it a variant because Blackjack was released by Atari. Well, there might be 1,000 Atari game blackjacks to one Sears blackjack. Probably not that much. Maybe it's 100 to 1 or something. So most people will recognize Sears as their own company and variants, and I do. There's some super rare games, especially boxed. I know Darediver offhand is one of them that comes to mind. But you'll see Yar's Revenge and Warlords and Asteroids, and again, there might be 1, 2 versions of Sears, but there are some that have like Target Fun. Target Fun was the packing game where Combat, which is Air Sea Battle for those who don't know it. Target Fun was the pack-in for Sears, where Combat was the pack-in for Atari. So you would get something different. I guess they didn't want to copy completely, and they said, okay, well, you can just buy an Atari to get Combat and have the same game. But a lot of times they change the names. So Target Fun is Air Sea Battle. Combat, they changed the Sears title as Tank Plus. Some games say the same. But a lot of times the Sears versions are much, much harder. And sometimes, like you go on my site, I don't have proof of certain boxes. I cannot find scans. And there were people on the Atari age that helped me out, and they actually were sending me Sears scans. But and these people probably have like every box and every variation of Sears out there. But some people just don't want to help out anymore. You lose touch. So my suggestion, Sears, I would give higher credence to collecting or investing, probably, as long as it's nicer condition. And if you can find them sealed, I'd say they're probably worth 5 to 10 times more than an Atari counterpart sealed. Sega, everybody knows Sega. Sonic the Hedgehog. Sega came out with their own system, the Master System, at the same time, around the same time that Nintendo did, after the crash. But Sega was putting out games for Atari. So I pulled out two more popular, more recognizable games. But like they had Congo Bongo. I saw it. I didn't pull it out. The collection to show you. That's based on the arcade game. You got your little safari guy running around and avoiding boulders and stuff. But one here, Buck Rogers, been around since friggin' early 1900s. Super popular, and it's called Planet of Zoom. It's not sealed, but it's complete in the box. Um, Again, names. The one thing I didn't think about the 20th Century Fox was Flash Gordon. But back to Sega. Buck Rogers is a name that's been around for a long time. So is it worth probably buying? Yeah, I would say so. It'll be, maybe not super valuable. But again, if you find stuff sealed, you might have. It's a matter of how much money you want to make over a period of time. And I mentioned that also in the first video, the intro video, that can you make more money flipping it in 6 months than you can sitting on it for 5 years, and or sell it and then reinvest and then keep doing that, or do you want to sit on something? So again, it's also not even just investing. It's conversation piece. People walk in, if they see my walls full of video games and shelves full of video games, they're like, hey, I remember that when I was a little kid and stuff. So it gives you something in common with people too. Okay, so other Sega game, Star Trek. You had Star Wars, and now you have Star Trek. And again, it's been around since the 60s. Everybody knows Star Trek, household name, just like Star Wars. And another probably good investment because it's recognizable. I don't remember too much about variations with Sega games offhand. So I'm not going to, for all I know, there might only be one or two. Sometimes it's just like, there's just like a small variation, like data age. Some of the boxes said assembled in Mexico versus didn't say it. Besides the side color printing. But it might just be subtle differences. And of course, I'm going to document that. But, most people probably not going to care. Okay, I'm going to move to Spectre Video, which is also called Spectre Vision. There are some rare games. My brain is not working right now, but I pulled out something that most people, if you grew up when I did, I don't remember if it was late 70s. I think it was the late 70s. The China Syndrome, Michael Douglas, Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon. They were trying to stop the nuclear reactor, and that's exactly what you have to do in this game. So here's a box copy. This is my copy, and if you look closely, right below where it says Syndrome, there's 5 languages. So this is the 5-language version. Probably more difficult than the US version, but can I get a premium on it? Probably not at this time. So, like I said, I have all the third-party software broken down on my site. And if you go on the site, you can click one company, and I describe the company usually at the brief paragraph or something, usually how many games are released for it, and then show the cartridge box, and then the middle, if it's missing, I didn't get to the manuals. If not, it might be blank, or maybe the third parties, if there's a few games to the entire library. A lot of times I'd actually just do the manuals, because most times there's only 1 or 2 versions of the manual. Combat might have 15, 20 versions of the manual. So, and it's not always easy to acquire scans of everything. So just because I know it exists doesn't mean I can, I have it on hand. So, go to the site, and, I try to give you at least one title on most of the popular third parties, but go there, see what's there, And if you recognize something, you like artwork, you say, oh, maybe I want that in my collection. Maybe I want that for investing. That's up to you. All right, Tiger Vision. Tiger Vision, probably most notable, rarest game is River Patrol. And Miner 2049ers, another popular game. Miner 2049er Part 2 is another next to impossible game. So finding games loose may be worth grading, but finding them complete in a box, definitely worth grading. And finding it sealed, it's like holy grail. So I pulled two games. Espiel, if I'm pronouncing it right. This is one of the not super rare games, but rare enough. Um, that's probably worth, like, this is open, but it's in nice condition. I mean, my copy's pretty good. Um, you get to see it doesn't have creases, it doesn't have dents, it doesn't have tears. So, you know, that was, I believe, the only Tiger Vision box game. I might have Miner 2049er. You know what it is? I collect for so many different systems that I might have the ColecoVision version boxed, but not the Atari version, or maybe I have the 5200 box, but not the 2600 or 7. It is so much out there, and I was collecting every system pre Nintendo at one point, or I tried to. There's systems that I don't even have the system. I might have a few cartridges for. I might have a couple box games, but I don't have the system. But there's so many out there. It's like 30 something systems I was collecting for. And this was like all pre 90. Maybe a couple after, but mostly pre 90. The other game, which is, again, if I mentioned about the lottery ticket, King Kong. I just acquired this a few months ago. I have King Kong. I've had multiples. There's actually a lot of cartridge variations of this game. Box variations, there might be a few, but the cartridge, I think there was like 10 or something like that. Somewhere between 8 and 12. That's why I just said 10. With printed and colors and molds and whatever it was. Just go on the site and you'll see. But I just acquired this, and I don't think I paid too much. But, it's in decent condition. And that's why I put it into plastic to protect it a little. It's got some wear. But, I new acquisition for the collection. U.S. games. Offhand, there's not too much coming into mind with U.S. games. Towering Inferno, which I have, I think, behind me, which I'm not going to get. But I do have a Towering Inferno based on the movie, again, from the 70s. Gopher I pulled out because I think it's a little rarer than most. But I'm trying to think of what game it is. There's one game specifically, and I can't think of what it is. My brain's not working. But it has, I think, like color variations on the cartridge label. And there's like 10 versions of that or something, 12 versions of that. And maybe I was being a little particular with it. It's just the printing or something. But U.S. games had very colorful boxes, cartoony and stuff. So, sometimes you buy a game because the game stinks, but the box art is great, and that's a lot of times that's how they sold you. They sold you on the box art, especially with Atari. They had some great box art, and you have that book out, and I actually bought it, The Art of Atari. I just want to cover a few more things before I cut this video, since it's 2 hours already. I want to mention Wizard Video. Those are the two games they released, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween. First off, I want to clarify for those of you who keep thinking this, there is no Friday the 13th video game for the Atari 2600. Unless somebody made a homebrew and put it out themselves recently, there was no original made. The one thing I want to point out, and I've been noticing this a lot on the internet, on the auction site, people keep making reproduction boxes. You have to watch out for reproduction boxes. If they're duly noted, that's fine. If it's printed on the box, that's even better. Or if it's printed on the cartridge label, that's even better. But you will have people pawn off or try to pawn off original reproduction items as originals. And, we see it all the time with comic books and things, counterfeits and things. And people just Xerox, and sometimes this stuff is really nice, but with the technology today, and I am so against it, You will see on Atari Age, people are willing to print out remake the labels for you because of Activision. Activision, a lot of times the glue would bleed through the labels, and they call it ActiPlaque, and it would make it look horrible. And so people are reproducing the labels, but if they're not noting it's a reproduction label, you're technically getting ripped off. And hopefully, again, these grading companies, and this is why I have fear. If I was a collector today and just starting out, I'd be very wary on buying things. I've been collecting, like I said, for almost 40 years in one hobby or another. So I have a lot of knowledge, and I've done a lot of research and stuff. So watch what you buy, especially if you're going to drop money. So no Friday the 13th. There is Texas Chainsaw and Halloween, but there are reproduction labels. There is no, and this is why I saw this. This is Zonix, and it's called a double ender cart. Zonix released, instead of you getting one game for a price, you would get two games for a price. So what would happen was, somebody's calling again. I'm going to hit ignore. All right. So instead of getting one game, you would get two, and they'd have a double ender. So you could plug the cartridge in your system and play Spike's Peak, or you can turn it over and play Ghost Manor. This is the most common of all Zonix games, and there's actually variations with this where this is a gray mold. There's also black mold versions, so you got black, not real black mold, but black plastic, gray and black plastics. Zonix also released, I think for pretty much every game, single-ended versions. So instead of, you can buy Ghost Manor by itself. Now, most of the times, the single cartridge is much more rare than the double-ended. I have a decent amount. I got 3 of them back there, actually, loose single-ended cartridges. Games, the popular games, Motocross Racer, Tomark the Barbarian, Robin Hood, and Sir Lancelot is probably a more rare games. Ghost Manor and Spike's Peaks, Artillery Duel, they're a lot more common. Maybe the single enders are like a single cartridge are a little rare. So again, do your homework. What I wanted to point out about the double-ended cartridge, you may see with Halloween, Halloween and Texas Chainsaw, a double ender. That is not an original. They would never release like that. So if you do see that, that's somebody making their own version and trying to make money. And some people know, this is a reproduction with both games, but other times they won't. So I want to cover a couple more things before we end. Adult games. I pulled this. It's play around, but Mystique came out with 3 games, adult games, and these were either sold in adult video stores back in the 80s or on the street. You would not find this in Sears. And this play around, I think, are foreign versions reproduced. I actually have all 6 of these. The problem with play around, if you have the Mystique, you get that stuff boxed and stuff, great investment. Because, how many is out there, especially boxed. I don't know if they came sealed or not, but they came with these little, because they came out with these little cases, and they actually had this little plastic area here. And if I remember, I don't know if it came with it or not, that, put a little lock so you couldn't get into the game if you're a little kid. So this was geared, again, towards adults. So this is a double-ended game, but it's smaller. Oh yeah, there's the lock. Yes, I haven't opened this. There's a little lock with the key, and I bought there's 6 of these, if I remember right, and I bought all of them brand new. These are all brand new. The problem with the play arounds is that a lot of them are dead cartridges, meaning that you plug it in, the game doesn't do anything. It's just those bars. The game doesn't work. And if you ever come across Atari games that don't work, usually you could just like Nintendo, you'd blow into it. But Atari games, you take a Q-tip with some alcohol, rub the contacts, clean the contacts, and then most of them will work. So I mean, I've had maybe 20, 25 dead games out of my entire library or not just my library, but all the duplicates, and I've had thousands and thousands of cartridges. So chances are most of the times they work. But the adult games are probably worth buying for investment wise, because the playability, you can play pretty much anything on the computer with emulators anyway. But there's one that came out called X-Man, um, which is its own company. And again, it's on the website. Again, that's probably another good one if you want investing purpose. Um, so I want to just throw this out there. I just bought this for $20 the other day. Oh no, there's something else here. I lost my game that I was going to show you. Oh well, I'll show you something different. It was a foreign game. Oh, here it is. It's called Forest by Sancho. This is one of the releases that are unique, never released in the U.S. And you're chopping down trees. It says, you have animals. I think you might have to beat up animals to get down to the trees. So environmentalists would hate this, but I got this for $20. It's got a couple little dents, but otherwise, this is out there. And is it worth investing? Grading and investing? Probably not. But I want to mention homebrews before I stop the tape, or stop the video rather. I'm dating myself again. My throat's starting to get a little dry. And drink some water. But homebrews, some people created their own stuff. Even back in the 80s. So you'll find QB Color. I didn't mention certain things like mail-aways, like tooth protectors from DSD Camelot, and Chase the Chuck Wagon, the dog food thing. Anything mail-away is probably good investment. Again, prototypes are probably good investments. But homebrews, some people just created their own stuff. They make their own versions of things. So will somebody come out with a Friday the 13th? I don't know. They made sequels to Adventure because it was so popular and stuff. And then some people come out with their own. They'll come out with the cartridge and they'll make a manual for it. But then there's other people who go, the extra distance. And you're going to pay for homebrews. A lot of times, I was paying $50 for homebrew. Like, this might have been $100 for all I know. Pink Panther. They took a prototype from Pink Panther, I think. And sometimes they finish the code and create a playable game. Sometimes they won't. But this was supposed to come out and never released. And, again, my number 42. I don't remember how many of these were made. A lot of times the person will say, okay, I'm about to make this game and release it, box limited, 200 copies, 250 copies, 100 copies. And you have to jump on it and usually pay in advance, wait 6 months to a year for them to develop it or print it and whatever. And then, then you get the game eventually. So homebrews are something that are usually released in limited quantities. It might be for a niche collector, but if it's popular enough, you got your cross collectors. You have Pink Panther. And the other one I pulled out, which I even forgot I had bought, was Fat Albert. And it's funny because it's like a two-lid, two-piece box, as you can tell. But on the back it says Jello Pudding Pops. So it's funny. I don't know. See, it says NEO Games 2015. So this is only 5 years old. But, it's cool. And, you grew up with Fat Albert. It's something that Fat Albert collectors would probably want. And I don't remember how many it was limited to. It's not numbered at all. So, hopefully, you enjoyed this video. It was informative for you. And if anything, you can ask questions, leave comments at the bottom. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.